in as the kind of Democrat who believes in the politics of cooperation, the politics of compromise. And that's so rare these days. It's so polarized, so balled up. We all stood with me under the most trying circumstances in American politics. And helped me hang on as the most gerrymandered member of Congress in history. Come on in. How are you? Good to see you. I feel like any preacher's lucky enough he can get a pulpit right next to the door. Folks can't get out. Pass the plate. You know, it's a real wonderful design. You can get away with it, right there. I also want to say a couple of things about where we are in this election. I'm running for the office that's the most important office that nobody used to know anything about, and that nobody would ever think about if it's being run right. If everything's going great, this is the office nobody's going to hear about. I can remember Roy Barnes once saying, the best economic development policy for a state like Georgia is to stay off the front pages of the Washington Post and the New York Times. We've been on the front pages of the Washington Post and the New York Times for an awful lot about the part of our government that ought not to be there at all. That's the part that conducts our elections. It's the most important job in our democracy. The Secretary of State is the person who we hire to make sure that our elections are fair. And I don't think you can say our elections are fair if it's harder for some folks to register than others.
Right.
It's harder for some folks just to stay registered than it is for others, and harder still folks to vote on election day than it is for others. When I'm Secretary of State, it's going to be my policy to make it as easy for every Georgia citizen to vote as it is for any Georgia citizen to vote. I think that's what fairness means to me. The whole country has gotten a crash course on the role that a Secretary of State plays. Mr. Mayor, thank you for coming. A crash course on the role that the Secretary of State plays day in and day out in the stuff that goes on before Election Day and in the stuff that goes on during Election Day. Before Election Day, we got this business of trying to register folks, keep them registered, check up, make sure the folks are on the rolls, belong there. Whole bunch of stuff that goes on behind the scenes before Election Day. And then there's the stuff that we're all familiar with. Stuff's got to happen on election. No 4.5-hour waits, please. No machines that are, whether or not they can be hacked or tampered with, they're just breaking down in front of us. 4.5-hour waits. It used to be a zip code problem. If you were in a rich zip code, you didn't have that problem. It's an equal opportunity problem. Now they're breaking down everywhere. I mean, we got lots of things going on Election Day that we need to fix. But here's something that we also know. These problems didn't just come from nowhere. These problems have been around for a long time. But they are problems that have been hiding in plain sight because they didn't apply, just didn't affect everybody. But if it affected someone you knew or affected you, it was a pretty big deal.
That's right.
But if it only happened to a few people scattered here and yonder, and it didn't happen to enough people to affect the outcome, well, it's easy for the powers that be to say, nothing to see here, roll right along, keep moving. But here's what we know. If the election's big enough, and the election is close enough, little things mean a lot.
They do.
And when you have an election for governor that's as close as this one has been, it's going to bring all of these little problems into sharp relief because it's going to be necessary no matter which side the shoe was on, no matter whose foot it was on. You're going to have to run down these loose ends. And if we don't fix these things now, in the regular course, outside of the conduct line, we'll be doomed to follow this pattern over and over again. Every close election is going to be one where we're going to be fighting over the last vote. We got to be fixing these things while we can ahead of time. And that's what we're going to have to do in Georgia. Now, Stacey's proved a couple of things. Georgia's a whole lot more competitive in this day and age than it was just 4 short years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Proven that. It hasn't been since, you can remember, 1966, when Lester Maddox was elected governor, not by the people, but by the legislature of Georgia. And why? Because the people didn't have a runoff. And no one got a majority. Well, we've changed that system. We now have an opportunity for a runoff, the people to decide this. But back then, if you didn't get a majority, you went to the legislature. That's the last time we had an election for a governor as close as this. And this is really a long time we've had to ignore these kinds of problems. That's one of the reasons why we have been able to ignore it. It hasn't been close enough for these little things to matter enough to make a difference, but they do today. And if we don't want to be like Florida, where every big election seems to be like that. We better fix these things in the off season so we don't have to deal with it at election time. The only thing I want to share with Florida is a border. That's fine. That'd be fine with me. I certainly don't want to share their electoral history, and this is a sign of things to come. It's an opportunity for us to fix things. She's also proven something else. In an era when our elections are as close as they are, our high stakes elections are as close as we've just been through, the Secretary of State's office is the difference maker.
Yes.
If it makes a difference to the outcome, if the office is being run sloppily or indifferently or not worrying about these problems, or it didn't happen to my team or to my side or it didn't happen to me, then that means we're going to keep on having that kind of attitude in the future. But if it makes that kind of a difference if we're doing it wrong, imagine the kind of difference it would make in Georgia politics if we're running that office right. It should have an equal and opposite and positive impact on our election. I think it ought to be as easy to call a close election as it is a blowout. We ought to be able to call it as early in the night, whether it's a close one or a blowout. And if we're running this office the way we should, that's what I think we can expect in the future. So that's why I'm running. That's why I think it's important. Also why I think we're doing well. Look at y'all. I mean, the level of interest that folks are showing in this election is huge. Y'all being here is a sign of that. But so is literally hundreds of people all across the state who are texting, who are phone banking, at home, who are knocking on doors. We've never had that level of interest before in one of these little down-ballot podunk elections. But because of the importance of this office, in fact, we've all gotten an education on, that's why people are paying so much attention. This is no longer just the most important election left in Georgia. It's the most important election left in this country right now. And not because it's the only election left, but because it concerns something we all now is much more important than we did before. So I think this is huge.